So this game is called Warframe, and Warframe. Well, how do I describe Warframe? Warframe is very complicated. That's how you describe Warframe. So I will go again. Actually, I would start from the very beginning. How to describe this game. So, starting from scratch, imagine yourself living in where you are in this time frame right now, in the world you're living in. Trump exists, United States exists, all this stuff exists. Now, fast forward into the future, following your same timeline, everything that you've ever seen in front of you has now been advanced to a certain level. So much so, you don't even have to get up off of the couch. You could literally make yourself, your spirit or your soul, do the work without your physical body doing the work. Now, to get to that point, it takes effort, it takes science, it takes wars, it takes survival, and it takes famine and plague, and of course, experimentations. That, in a nutshell, is Warframe and the future of where the species, as us human beings, have gotten to this point. So, how do we go from where we are now to where we are in this future? Well, this is either an alternate universe world, or this is the distant future that Digital Extremes plan for everyone else, or in this world. Assume that this is the world that we eventually will get to. If not, it's an alternate world based on where we would get to, if we ever get to it. So from the beginning, the idea was something that started by the company. They just wanted to create something that wasn't created before, moving forward. And from there, they created something called Warframe. It was just an idea. But eventually down the road, that idea became a story. And that story developed in time through certain sections and chapters. And these sections and chapters were called quests. And these quests were all chopped up pieces. So basically, when they originally created this game, it was a sandbox. It was more like a sandbox, felt more like a sandbox. So nothing was organized. All these quests, none of these things were organized. They're more like things that you were supposed to do, and they all had stories behind them, and those stories were all hidden in the dark. But they were never truly connected until the creation of a story called The Second Dream. This is when the public community made an outcry for Digital Extremes to make their stories more organized and put together. So once they made the stories more organized and put together rather than shattered, scattered pieces, that's when things started to fall into place and when their lore and their stories started to meld together more. Whereas feel like their lore was just something that you would see in a From Software game from Dark Souls. It's all over the goddamn place into something that was more organized. Granted, when you play all these quests, it still feels that way. But now they added certain features to make you to make it less complicated, to not feel that it's all over the damn place. And these things never used to exist. So this is one of the features I would introduce with regards to the game. And these features I will start from number one is the options menus. So I just told you what the actual story was from where we are to where we are into the future and how we got there. Basically is everything you've ever seen in your life from Roman times or previous before the Romans exist and previous before the Egyptians exist when people were making stone hedges and before then during the Ice Age period. It's basically the progress of the human species through experimentation, through progression, through survival instincts, and through pushing themselves forward. How this world came into being and how these creatures came into being called warframes is part of the experimentation. And the experimentation was using human beings and bioorganisms and machines. Three things in one made a Warframe. Do not be confused. This is not like Tony Stark's armor. He created something in the lab and then it became sentient and became Ultron or something. Had a mind of his own. No, these things were disease manufactured and then use said disease or biomass disease or chemical disease and they fused it on top of a machine, a sentient machine. And then they melded that down or melted it down or formed it and they infused it onto, guess what? A human being, voluntarily or involuntarily. Guess what will happen to that person? That person will be consumed by said disease because it was no longer like a disease anymore. The disease melded with the sentient AI, which part of the sentient structure and part of the disease was to have a kind of atomic, microscopic, nanomachines intelligence within its own organism, within the makeup of its fluid. So it's basically, it was a computer within the fluid that made up the helmet, and the helmet bioplast. So it understands, it has an understanding of its existence. An understanding of its existence was then placed on top of a human being, and then the human being eventually turned into this thing you see right here, which basically means organs, legs, bones, arms, brain. All of these eventually got destroyed, consumed, or digested if you want. And like every Ken doll that you make inside of an industry factory, eventually it has to be heated and cooled, and eventually it becomes hard, like hard plastic, because it has to take form. And it took this form. Now the inside of every Ken doll or anything else, obviously, in order for it to move on its own, it requires nanomachines or technology. The skin, as well as the liquid part of the Warframe, has to have an understanding of its existence. So even there's no chip inside of the Warframe's brain. Its understanding lies within its biomass that's surrounding the inside of its chassis, of itself. There's not complete whole, but if you were to take off this Warframe's head, a whole lot of water is not going to just pop and fall onto the water, and there's nothing but biomass on the floor. It's not like that. It's like a cake. The outside of the cake is hard. Eventually, you get to the inside of the cake, it's very soft. And when you get directly to the center, there's a little bit of liquid. So it's not completely like one hard structure in there. Everything in the inside is water. It slowly has layers until it gets to the water part. That's why when a Warframe bleeds out, it's leaking fuel like a car, but it's not completely a car. It doesn't have like organs and tissues and bones and everything. It's like a Ken doll. So that was what a Warframe is. Now going back to the options menu, in order to control such Ken doll and to control such quests, these options were created. You roll over something, the rollover pops over, it's yellow. This used to be the standard in regards to the game. Eventually they made such text and stuff small enough so that you could fit everything else, and made an L1 and R1 to move left and right in order to access such things. But with regards to the quest never used to have these buttons whatsoever at all. It just used to be this, and then you select it, and when you select it, it will tell you what it had to do, And there used to be something on the side to select how many of that quest you had to do. Moving on from that, you then used to have the text on top of this right here on the codex. It used to be codex and the name of the different type of missions. It used to say quest, universe, training, so on. There was no levering or any of that. But there was no like side text either. It was just text. So it's codex and then text on the tops and then square boxes in the center that you could do rollovers. This was created simply for the fact of they needed to organize their disorganization. And this organization was imperative for them to be organized in order to create a proper story, or at least to organize the commotion and chaos and conjunctions and concoctions of what it was that was out of place. So once this was created, you had something called all, like you selecting all items from all menus. Then you had something called story, and then you had something called side, and then you had something called Warframe. This never used to exist before. This was simply made there to give the player the understanding of where they had to go, what they had to do, and what was the differentiation between the story quest, the side quest, and Warframe quests. Warframe quests are specifically different from side quests because they have nothing to do with the story. Side quests are different from the story, but they are somewhat aligned to the story, but they're not technically part of the main universe, of the main story. This is how Warframe became more organized, because they linked all the things necessary towards it actually having a cohesive story by putting not only these buttons, by separating all the commotions of the different boxes and different missions into their proper categories like they should have done from the very beginning. So that's that. So now I just give you an idea of I'm sitting in a room drinking a cup of coffee and playing a video game within on a screen and stuff. Fast forward into the future, I don't even need to touch a controller. I just need to use my soul in order to play said video games, and the video games in that future won't be something on the screen. It actually are things called warframes, because I won't be playing a game anymore. I'll be using a real thing to really kill real enemies. So it's to that level where one thing was just virtual reality, now it's a real reality. So in this sense, I wouldn't say that the person that's controlling this warframe is playing a game. I'm just using that as an example of how the evolution of the species that's called human has gotten, where they don't even need to get off their ass like our operator right here. You could just sit inside of a chamber, probably have a donut or something, and then operate this thing that's going to be using a gun, a knife, a sword, his feet and his legs. Hell, could even do a dance. And even spinning right here, right now. This person sitting in this chair is telling this thing right here to spin around, simply because it wants it to. And the person telling this thing to spin around is the operator. And the operator is me telling the operator to tell this thing to spin around. So technically, the true operator of this game is you, the user. When someone says use the user, as they do in Hack That Sin, the anime, it's a representation of you, the user, telling your other user to do the thing, to make the object or the person do the thing. Like in Hack That Sin, you wanted the bard to do the bard thing. Well, the user had to make the bard do the bard thing. But the difference between Hack That Sin and this game, or the anime of Hack That Sin and this game, is that you only had one user and one avatar. Whereas in this game, there's three. There's you, the user. Then there's the in-game AI user, which is you're pretending to not be yourself. You're pretending to be a character you're going to control. But this character you're controlling is not technically the avatar. It's the user again. And the avatar is the one that you're controlling, the Warframe. So there are two avatars, two users. You, the God one, controlling the in-game non-God one, which is the third person user here, which is then using the avatar. So you're channeling yourself through a third person to do the thing for the... Actually, no. You're channeling yourself through being the fourth person into the person who's the second person into now the third person. Like a carpenter. The carpenter is the third person doing the carpenting. The second person is the company that sent the carpenter to do the work, which this operator is. And the first person is you, the God complex or God person, operating the company that's operating the third person to do the carpenting work. So that's basically Warframe in a nutshell. There are two users. There's the fictitious user, and then there's you, the real user, operating the fictitious user who's pretending to be the user that's operating the Warframe. It's a little complicated, but not really. Moving on from that, you complete a mission, and eventually you get into your ship. This mission is called, as part of the story, Vor's Prize. Vor's Prize is basically your first boss that you will ever encounter. Now, you don't necessarily have to fight him to be the first boss you fight, but he's the first boss that you come across before you operate your Warframe. As I said before, you wake up one day in this future and you wonder what the hell is going on, where the hell you are, and why do you look like this robot and stuff. It's simply because the people who made the game are showing you their idea of what they believe the future is through this game and the progression of science and technology and wars. So you wake up, you encounter this first boss, War's Prize, then you get to select what type of Warframe you're going to use. And then you ask yourself, I know the title of the game is called Warframe, but why is the title of the game called Warframe? Well, then if you break it down into a science or into an Encyclopedia Britannica or even to a dictionary, there's war, and then there's frame. Self-explanatory. It's like, it can't be that simple, but it is. This is a war that's happening in this universe, like a Star Wars. And then this is the frame that's being used within that war. And why it's called a frame is because it's a representation of the word by the definition of said word, frame. A thing that's used to house something else, house a picture, house a container, house water. A frame of something meant to keep something in order for you to either look at it, contain it, drink it, whatever. It's meant to hold something in order to do something. In this case, this frame is meant to hold the soul of said operator who's making it do something. And that thing that it's doing is combat in war. That's why it's a war frame. It's meant to fight wars. Or it's an operator inside of the frame seeing the wars. So it's weird in a way. It's like the picture that has housed the frame that housed the picture. It's like the picture is looking from the inside out towards the person that's looking at the picture. So that's how the soul of the operator is. It's like it's looking through this body of this Warframe around the world. Just like the picture looking at the world rather than the person looking at the picture. It's very strange, but it's not really. Moving on from that, you got your options menu. Then you get into your ship. You get to see things interact. Why they chose these texts and why they chose pop-up. Why? It's because square is an obvious type of text format to use with regards to anything that you do in life because it's easier to use square. Now, if they use circle, or if they didn't use square, or if they didn't use triangle, they use circle to put text inside circles, then it feels a little odd to have a giant circle and then to put text within the giant circle, and it makes the text, which are all basically horizontal in form and vertically in form, both square in shape or in image in your eyes and in your mind, they're all squared, fit and squared. So in order to respect those texts, you put those things also in squared and horizontal forms. So they chose horizontal, and they chose low opacity text, and not low opacity text, but low opacity background, and light whites to represent the borders around the text. This is easy because no matter what type of color or radiance or discoloration or changing of your resolution within your game, you're still able to see it. Even if you have bad eyesight, bold white against black is always easy to see rather than white against any other color. And to make it look kind of even more realistic rather than static and more futuristic, they lower the opacity. It's like watching a comic book made by Jack Kirby and watching a comic book made by Grant Morrison. There's not a lot of gradation in Kirby's stuff, but there's a lot of grainy effects, there's a lot of low opacity, and there's a lot of, uh, what's it called? Missing the word. Gradient blurs. Gaussian blurs, as well as flaring effects within modern comics compared to those by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. You can see it obviously within the background. If you look at the background, someone saying, "Oh no," they put their hands on their face, and they're on a background with the rain in the back. You'll only see the drawing of the rain in the back, the colors on the person's clothing and everything, but you won't see any opacity. You won't see any blurring effects. You won't see any distance using blurring effects to represent the perspective of depth. That's the difference between modern stuff and old stuff. Now, if you're very good at your job when it comes to drawing, you're able to use foreshortening, and you're able to use distance, and you're able to use color to represent the distance between something that's in front of you and something that's far away from you, like all the way over there to all the way over here. So that's a nice little thing in comparison to making things easier in your eyes when playing the game. I always respect this game with regards to that. Moving on from that, I'm now going to speak on one thing, the most important thing, combat. I will get into inventory management thereafter, but the first thing I'm going to go to is combat. How does combat feel? How it works? Because that's the main thing. Once you get in the game, the first thing you want to get in the game and play in any game is the combat. Does it feel fluid? Does it operate smooth? Do you move fluidly? Can you control your weapon fast? Can you move fast? Does things work sluggishly? Does it take you time to do something? We'll see. So this will be a test run, a nice little test run. So let's pretend like this was, just for nostalgia's sake, since it's been 10 years of playing Warframe. Banshee was one of the very first Warframes. She was one of the very first Warframe in open beta, I believe in open beta 13. So since she was one of the very first Warframe when it was open beta, meaning that it was open to the public, the very first Warframes to be open to the public, and this Banshee Warframe was accessible as a separate Warframe from the first three primaries. The first three primaries was Volt, your next one was Excalibur, and your next one was Mag. Those were your primaries that you had to select through from the very beginning. The others that you had to get later on were ones that you had to farm in missions, such as Banshee and Sarn and so on and so forth. Those you could get by actually doing work, by busting your ass and getting them in missions. So Banshee wasn't one that was just given to you as an option of you have now selected to play the game called Warframe. No, she was something that you have to get by defeating certain bosses. So, with respects to that, I am now going to play as Banshee and showcase her abilities, as well as show how mechanics of Warframe works. What is a Warframe, and how does it work in missions, and what makes it so different from other games? How does it feel in other games? I play Raid Shattered Legends once, never went back to it again. It's not a bad game. It's not for me. Then I played something like Neverwinter. Not a bad game. Not a great game, but not a bad game. Then I played something like Code Vein. Very good game. Very great game. Very interesting. Different from Raid. Different from Warframe. Different from Elden Ring. Different from Mass Effects. Each game has their different play styles, and each game has their only different appeals. Not everyone is going to like something. So when you make a game, you must consider every single human being on this planet, how they feel, how they think about certain things, and what it is that they want from said thing. So you must sell yourself to every single audience. Those who are also disabled, those who are also um, have certain issues with regards to understanding things faster than others, those who are very fast and quick with the update, those who are average, and those who simply do not care and just want to enjoy the experience. And then those who are also streamers and stuff. How do you appeal to all these people? You make something that's effective within how you show them through the object that you're going to use, through the menu system and through combat and through the mechanics of combat. Once they get an idea of the mechanics of combat and doing combat and see how it works, how it feels, how the menu system to operating the things, then the people start to be interested in everything else around them, such as the world, such as crafting, such as the lore, such as who certain people are. Then people start to get more invested with everything else. If the mechanics and the operation of the things work and it's interesting and it's fascinating, they start to become more invested in other things. That's how you do things. You showcase it based on gameplay of how that thing operates. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm now going to go into the menu system. Then I'm going to go into my different loadouts, and these are the loadouts. So when you first get into Warframe, the game tells you to come here to this thing called Arsenal. You go here and automatically turn around facing yourself, the user. And then you go up and down. Use your L3 if you're using your controller. And you're on this left side here. And it's very fast. And I'm going up and down very fast because you can change it to go up and down very fast. Or you can make it go slow as molasses, depending on how much you want to configure your options. So when you go up and down here, you select the Warframe. And pressing on the X button, you select, and you can select what type of Warframe you want to select. And that's that. But also, on the side of that, there are different drop-down menus. And on these drop-down menus, allow you to select your loadout. Now you would say, well, where the hell is the loadout? It doesn't say loadout. So that's the only thing I would say that they missed. The obvious should be stated right on the front screen. But it's not too bad. It's just after 1, 2, 3, 4, and then boom, you found it. Your loadout is within your appearance, so it's not complicated. A, B, and C. And if you want more loadouts, it's right there. You purchase it. Typically, the game gives you one loadout. As you progress for I believe every 10 mastery rank levels you get to, you get another loadout. Once you get past mastery rank 10, you get to mastery rank 20, you get another loadout. Once you get past mastery rank 20 to mastery rank 25 or 30, you get another loadout. So when I reached the mastery rank 20, I believe I got a third loadout. So it might actually start 5 or 10, 10, 15, and 20. This is how I believe it is, 10, 15, and 20. And you get 3 loadouts. So when I get to master rank 30, I'm probably going to get this loadout. I don't technically have to buy this loadout. It's going to be given to me. So it's up to you how you want to purchase things in the game, or if you don't want to purchase anything at all in the game whatsoever at all. So now, with that said, and the loadout, you get to select what type of loadout you want. You press on the button A, B, C. I'm going to go with B. And this loadout is primarily for the outfit I'm wearing. It's not for the weapons I'm going to be wearing. It's a loadout simply for what I'm going to be wearing. That's all. If you want the loadout for what weapons you're going to be choosing, the loadout for what weapons you're going to choose fall into just one slot, your very beginning, your very first one. So when you press square and everything, that's just appearance loadout. So there's loadout for appearance, and then there's the loadout for the general game itself. So there's one loadout for the game with regards to the main game itself, the overall AOE world, and that's this loadout right here, your first one, with this lotus symbol. Basically, the easiest way to know is to look at the symbol right here. This is the one loadout the game comes with regards to AOE. You must remember that. Then there's another loadout, and that second loadout that comes is for appearance loadout, and that's just for appearance, that you want to go into combat for your first loadout, which is your symbol over here. So you have two with regards to your AOE world and people you're going to be fighting, and you could choose between that. But then there's a third loadout. And that third loadout is with regards to PvP. Now, that third loadout is this. So there's regular AOE game loadout, and then there's PvP game loadout. And you would choose this because this is Conclave. Conclave PvP loadout is different from AOE loadout. This is an AOE game. You versus the AI environment. That's what this game is. This is not, For Honor, where you fight an AI, but you're mainly supposed to be fighting other players. This is a you versus the world game. This is like Doom. So you have your regular loadout, and then you have your AOE loadout. And this is your PvP loadout, and this is your AOE loadout. So that said, I'm now going to move on to doing the mission. Alright, so now I have my loadouts. I could now start the mission with Banshee, one of the very first Warframes to ever been introduced to the game, way back in the days. Yeah, your first original three, Excal, Mag, and Volt. Those were the first three primary introduced within the open beta when the game first came online for everyone to purchase or to play as a free-to-play game. And then you had the ones that you could farm in mission that were hidden that you didn't know existed, but you eventually found out. This was one of them. So Banshee, if anyone wants to know when was Banshee first introduced, open beta, when the game first came out. And open beta simply means when it was open to the public, for everyone to play, not just a few people and critics and stuff, for like the whole world. So we are going to test what a Warframe is. And we're going to test this Warframe that's being operated. We're going to test this Warframe and what this Warframe is in a mission. And we're going to test how it functions, how its mechanics work, how it feels, how fast it moves, how jagged the body operates. Can the character duck down? Can it move to the side? Is it reaction time fast? Is the weapon pulling up good?
Our intel suggests that our person of interest is in the vicinity. Search for the hostage and bring them home. The enemy is on high alert. The moment you enter the holding area, they'll trigger the execution sequence. Rescue the hostage before it finishes. Hurry up. You are running out of time.
I thought I was gonna die in there. Thank you. Give me a weapon and I'll watch your back.
Escort mission complete. The hostage is safe now. Let's get out of here.
Test successful. Reaction speed, fast. Pulling up the weapon, fast. Movement speed, fast. Casting of ability, medium fast. Now we're going to test projectile speed, weapon movement, weapon switching.
Operator, incoming transmission. It's from Fortuna.
Allied V's selling the latest in asset security. Conduits. Put the key in and you can pull the shinies out. Trick is, you gotta wait to open. Something happens to the conduit before you can pull the goods. You don't get the goods. Ever. Also, the bleeders Allied sold the tech to will try to kill ya. Give that console the old bypass so we can get this thing started. This isn't your regular vault job. Allied V sold the conduits with interference routines specifically designed for the Tenno. Don't you worry though. I've got some workarounds. Conduit keys are carried by high-ranking muckety-mucks. Knock 'em down. See what they've got. First key. Right. Find a matching conduit. Demo unit incoming. Don't let them near the conduit. Hear that beeping? Demo unit's on its way. Demo unit's looking to depart this mortal coil and take you with it. Keep it clear of that conduit. left you, and now the conduit's blown. Move on. Move on.
Movement speed pretty good. Weapon switching good.
Demo unit coming in fast. That thing blows and you can kiss the conduit goodbye. Hope you're not done. Had to pay Maru a small fortune in rations for this tip. Fault signal returns. Dig in.
Wise Parvos, the low thief shall never know the cool caress of your crowns. More of the old ultra-violence. Keep your back to the objective, old mate. Lock it down till she pops.
Demo unit's looking to depart this mortal coil and take you with it. Keep it clear of that conduit. Demo unit incoming. Don't let them near the conduit. Hear that beeping? Demo unit's on its way. Right. They're back. And they're well pissed off. Demo unit coming in fast. That thing blows and you can kiss the conduit goodbye. got as much as we're getting, Hotshot. We are a vapor trail.
That's successful. There's lag when it comes to let me see, pulling up the weapons fast. Reload the weapon depends on the weapon type and its capabilities. Switching weapons is fast as well. Moving with the weapons is fast as well. Reloading while moving with the weapons is a feature. Some games won't have that. So I guess I could only say the lag with regards to the weapon is how long it takes to load, but that all depends on type of weapon that you have. Everything about the weapon is good. Weapon system is good. So moving on to the next. Another reason why this game's epic is weapon system is good. The switching between weapons is good. The loading of weapon is good, but also depends on type of weapon. If you want fast loading weapon, you go with fast loading weapon. Slow loading weapon, you go with slow loading weapon. It's moving the weapon is what's necessary. How you pull the weapon in, how you aim down sights with the weapon, how fast the weapon fires, or how slow the weapon fires, how you move with the weapon. Is it janky? Is there a lot of recoil? Is it effective against enemy? It works good because some weapons are designed to be janky, some weapons are not. But the mechanics with regards to those features, are those janky with regards to those features, or those things that comes with those weapons? No. Those mechanics are steady and stationary regardless of what weapon you're carrying. If the weapon recoils, that's just the weapon recoil in the character's hands. If the weapon's stable in the character's hands, it's just stable in the character's hands because the weapon is more stable than other weapons. The person, the character, and how the character moves, the animation stuff won't change regardless of what weapon they're using. So I like the fact that that's consistent. Moving on to the next. It's yet another reason why this game is epic. Now we're going to go into powers. So I already showed off the powers. Well, how does the powers work? Let's say you first put on this game, first decide to download this game and play this game. But you want to understand how the power system works. All you got to do is once you're given the option to get your ship and to go to your arsenal, and it says here arsenal, first thing you do is roll over your mouse on the character. You don't have to press it down or anything. You just roll over it. Because pressing it down takes it into a screen of where you select Warframes because it says so on the side. Equipped is X. What Warframe do you want equipped? What weapon do you want equipped? What melee weapon do you want equipped? What focus school do you want equipped? Select the focus school you want equipped. X represents equipping things. So if you want to actually select and see how to use a Warframe's powers and abilities, how to use it, not what they are, you select R2 on your controller. And this will pull up the menu for a little animation scene of the Warframe in its stationary state with a pan in and pan out shot and a selection sheet with regards to different moves. And the fun thing about this never used to exist before. The tip section never existed, as well as the levels of operations abilities never existed before. Because this was when Warframe existed, there weren't any operators, so these didn't need to exist, nor did the tip section needed to exist, nor did the passive needed to exist. So 1, 2, and 3 were things that never existed in the old game. After about a good 10 years, I would say within the first 5 years, the passives were introduced, or the tips were introduced in the first 5 years. I would say within the next 6 to 7 years, the passives were introduced with the introductions of operators. And after the 6th to 7th year, tips were introduced. So, first thing we introduced was the standard that came with the game. Second, once the operator was introduced, that became the second thing to be introduced. Third, the different variations towards modifiers were then introduced. And I believe the original was the standard set right here. And the next thing was introduced was tips, in order how to use those standard things. And the third thing that was introduced was passives, and then this was introduced as the fourth. So that's how it went. The original had your 4 standards here, then it had tips that came thereafter in order to teach people how to do things in open beta. And then thereafter, once the operator was introduced, passives were introduced. And then modifiers towards weapons and modifiers towards warframes were then introduced thereafter. So within the 10-year slot, it went from none of these things being on the side here, including show basic stats. None of these things existed on the side. The only thing that existed was 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons, an exit button, and then animation towards the character. Those things existed. Those things that existed within the first 5 years of the game, or the first year of the game. Those things existed when you used to press R2. The character, the 4 slots, and then an exit button to get the hell out. You used to roll over to see what they are, what their cooldowns were, so on and so forth, and their meanings, and then you exit out. There was none of this show basic, that didn't exist. There was no tips, that didn't exist. Passive, that didn't exist. Tips came after the first year, or maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe tips came like a couple of months during the first year of open beta, but then tips came thereafter, regardless. So first was introduced this, then tips, then the operator was introduced passives, and then this was the last that was introduced. So with that, we're going to now check out the Warframe's capabilities and what they do. Another reason why the game is awesome is the ability to change how you want to escalate that power ratio and how fast you want to escalate it, or how slow you want it to go down, or how you want it to be in mid-range, or how you don't want it at all. There is no game that I've played before that allows you to change up how you do your powers this much, how you do certain things, how you manipulate your powers this much. Most games offer you is different ways to do the power and different modifiers in order to do the power. There is no game I've ever played where it allows you to escalate how much and how low you do. Typically, modifiers was what you would put on in order to do that, or to execute that. There was no button to, I want to escalate this level up and down by percentages. Most games just give you a modifier and you put it on in order to do a thing. This game, however, gives you the ability to escalate it up and down by the percentage, how much and how low you want based on how much power you want to put in, how much you want to take out, how much fuel you want to give, how much gas you want to give to your Warframe, or how much gas you don't want the Warframe to have, but how much speed you want it to move with little gas, so on and so forth. So, first things first, you look at the abilities. Drain, cooldown, recharge speed. These are standards within the game. Every ability has a drain, and every ability either has a cooldown or it has a radius. Not all abilities have duration, but every ability has a drain, a cooldown, or a radius. Those are the standards. The game, each Warframe has their own thing, but the standards have always been drain, cooldown, and radius. This Warframe has drain, cooldown, and radius, but it also has shield recharge. So we're going to test this out. We're going to test out all this Warframe's capabilities, how it works, how it operates during its range, during its power outage, during its power impact, and during its power escalations and de-escalations. And to test this out, you first select what you want to have based on your loadout. So I was saying with regards to there are 3 loadouts in the games. There's the loadouts that you see right here for your first primary for your AoE. Then there's the loadout for your fashion accessories that comes with your AoE or whatever it is you're trying to do. Then there's the loadout for PvP. 1, 2, 3. But technically, there's 4. This game has 4 goddamn loadouts. If I'm not mistaken, it also has 5. I might actually be wrong. The game might actually have 5, but so far I remember there are actually 4. There's a loadout for fashion. There's a loadout for AoE. There's a loadout for PvP. And then there's a loadout for your loadout. And that loadout for your loadout is the loadout for your modifiers. The modifiers, or in this game, mods, just regular mods to put on. Well, modifiers. That's you should apply to your Warframe in order to apply to the Warframe and the weapons. Because modifiers aren't just towards the Warframes. Certain effects of certain modifiers toward the Warframes can go directly affecting towards the weapons as well. This game has something called the synergy effect. Most games don't have that. Most games, when you mod something of that specific thing, it stays on that specific thing. It's just that the character or person are able, once they use that thing, the effects of that thing would work, and they're able to get a firing rate or something based on their modifiers. This game, on the other hand, why this is an epic game, has something called synergy. A Warframe can synergize with a weapon's firing effect, a weapon's power, a weapon's recoil, and make it go in faster or make it go in slower. So depending on the Warframe's modifiers on the Warframe itself, a weapon can either fire fast or fire slow. Or depending on how fast the weapon is, or if you have modifiers in weapons, those effects can contribute towards the Warframe survival. Let's say a weapon has a modifier for crit damage. But that crit damage is not towards the weapon, it's towards the critical damage of the Warframe's power. A bonus contribution that comes with the weapon's modifier itself. This weapon has that. This is what you have. This typically happens when you play MMORPG games or any MMO games that goes past their 5th year. The game is expanded. The game is expanded to a level that it's able to experiment with many things. That's why I would never compare a AAA game to any MMO game. That's not fair. because MMO game has been in the long run for a very long time. The only time you compare an MMO game to anything is towards another MMO game. It's not really fair to compare an MMO game to a AAA budget game. That's not MMO. It has to be in a multiplayer, mass multiplayer arena, and it has to be past a certain point, past 5 years, or within that 5-year marker. Because if a game been out for more than 5 years, for 10 years, 6 years, 7 years, it's not fair to compare it to a game that's been out for just 1 year or 2 years within the multiplayer arena. You have to be logical about certain things. And in this game, the only games I would compare them to with regards to this game are games that are within the 5-year and higher slot and are in the multiplayer online arena. If it's not mass multiplayer online, I would never compare regular multiplayer to mass multiplayer online, because there's so much more a mass multiplayer online offers that regular multiplayer online just cannot do. It just cannot do. Code Vein is a multiplayer online, but there's just certain things that game cannot do because it's not meant for masses. Neverwinter is a mass multiplayer online. You just can't compare something like For Honor or another Sword and Shield game, Dragon's Dogma, you know, which you can technically consider that a mass multiplayer online depending on who you are, but you can't compare them by levels to each other. Just like I wouldn't compare this to a game like Bloodborne. Even though there's multiplayer feature in Bloodborne, you can play with your friends. I would never compare this to Bloodborne, even if this was like a Bloodborne game and you completely plays like a Bloodborne game and there was no Space Ninja. Simply because it falls into the mass multiplayer arena, it does not grant the ability to be compared because it's unfair. There are more things that are offered in multiplayer. Moving on to the next why this game is awesome is one of those reasons why in the mass multiplayer arena why it's superior and why most mass multiplayer online games are considered to be in the 9s if they're done well. And the ones that are real popular and done well are always going to be in the mid-9s to high 9s, or even some in the low 9s, but none fall into the 8 category. Warframe falls into the low 9s to mid-9s. So it's one of those epic games that you have to play. And let's say if you don't want to play it, or you don't think you have to play it, let's say you play World War Z. It's like you find World War Z more fascinating. Well, that's kind of dumb because you're really not given a full meal. It's like you're just given a sandwich and a cup of coffee, or you're just given a cheeseburger and a large drink and say that's your meal. Whereas you go to this other, fast food place, they give you a whole goddamn freaking plate with not just a hamburger, but a hamburger, a large curly fries, a side of shake, some appetizers, napkins, forks, and some cheesy bread. So you not only have a meal, you have appetizers, you have side order stuff, you have dessert. That's why I would never compare a mass multiplayer online game to a regular online game, or any game that's single player or just AAA. It's just unfair. The amount of food you get to eat in a mass multiplayer game at the mass multiplayer arena buffet is far beyond that of regular games. All good mass multiplayer online games are in the 9 categories. And even though World War Z is mass multiplayer online, it's not good because, how would I say it? It's not made good. It's not developed good. There's Chinese food buffet and then there's McDonald's buffet, and then there's fancy restaurant buffet. It's the difference between night and day. They're not good, and then they are good. This is one that's good. So here's another thing with regards to that. And it seems kind of weird because I would say can't compare them to each other, even though World War Z is multiplayer online. I wouldn't say it's mass multiplayer, it's just multiplayer online. But it feels like mass. But that's what I was trying to say. I won't compare them to each other because it's unfair. Here's an example of why this game is awesome and why most mass multiplayer games online are in that category. Just for the controllers themselves, you have this amount of things to select. And then in the controllers, just for one of them, you press on just one of them, and you get another pop-up screen. Just one out of those many listings. Your pop-up screen. And guess what else? You not only get one menu that shows where in controller you can adjust certain things and switch off, like you do with most games, even games that are not mass. You then get to choose where to place them. Most games will give you an automatic choice. You choose A, B, C, or D. And the configuration that they put with regards to modding your controllers, you have to select which one is most comfortable for you. Not many games will allow you to select per each button on your controller where to place exactly where you want things to be. Most of the times is mass multiplayer online gives you these options. Not many games do that at all. In fact, some mass multiplayer online games don't do this. Another reason why Warframe is superior over its competitions, because it gives you that singular option to change each button per your controller configurations. Not many games, even many mass multiplayer online games, do that at all. The next button is remote. You can change that as well. The next is your Y and X. You could change that right there. That's pretty simple. The next is this, all your different Warframes. You can make them default. You could change them to standard. You can invert them. And you can default again. I mean, are you seeing this? Every single goddamn... I haven't even got to the bottom yet. I haven't even reached the bottom yet. Not even at the bottom yet. And you could change up so many things within just one column here. I haven't reached the bottom yet. And I'm not going to reach the bottom. I'm just going to skip all the way to the bottom. So, and then you have this button. You could check it and take it all the way off or turn it all the way up. Then you have this, take it all the way off, turn it all the way up. And these are the various different buttons for a railjack or ship, an Arkwing, a flying suit like Superman, a dead zone control area, different configurations for when you're fighting in different combat situations, for your standard gameplay, and for your general gameplay. So there's general gameplay settings, then there's in-game gameplay settings, then there's controller dead zone gameplay settings, because there are certain areas where dead zone works better than anything else. And then there's Arkwing, because sometimes you're flying all over the place. And then there's decoration placement settings, because when you're in mission sometimes you could adjust how certain decorations look in mission as well as inside your own dojo. So there's so many different settings you could do for just one thing, like in a mission. Well, not so much decoration, but so much thing you could do to configure before you even go into the mission to do said mission. It's completely weird, but welcome to the mass multiplayer online world. And then you go to the next column. That was just the first column. Then you go to the next column. And then there's adjustment settings for the next column. And this is the simplest one, because this is your system, so there's not going to be a lot. but there's the pings. You could adjust the pings up and down, as high and as low as you wanted to. Most games allow you to do this if there's mass multiplayer online. Few games don't allow you to do this if they're not mass multiplayer online. Of course, they add crossplay, and then you go to the next. Then there's the entire social level. There's the chat section. There's this changing of privacy, and the chat appearance. And then you get to the next column. I'm not going to go into every single one of these because they'll take forever. And there's the user interface, which is you using your interface, and you press on this and change up how you want your entire format of this entire background scene. How you want certain buttons to pop up, where you want certain buttons to pop up, where you want them to be set, where you want them to be placed, what color you want them to be, how scale, how high you want them to look, how big you want them to look. You want your button, your mouse to look like it's huge as hell because it's been eating a lot of food. You want it to look like it's slim. That's one thing. That's just for one button. And then there's the guidance. You could change that on and off. And then there's the measurements. You could change that down to as much as you
the
want.
balance of power continues to shift. Navigation is marked with new invasions.
And then you could choose to turn on another good thing that most games do not do. Most games don't allow you to turn off the configurations for your AI bots and for your pets and for your map areas and for weapon firing and for weapon effects. This game will allow you to do all those goddamn things. Name me a lot of games that will allow you to turn off the blood with regards to you killing an enemy, or turn off the names of your pet, or turn off the effects or shielding of a pet, or turn off the health bar and shield bar, or scope, or all this with regards to your enemies and the world and the environment you're in. Not many games do this. A lot of people who don't play Warframe, or a lot of people who talk about Warframe, do not go into the specifics of every nooks and cranny with regards to this game. That's why I say this game is anywhere from 9.3 to 9.5. Anyone who has this game is in the 8 is out of their goddamn mind. And should be sued. Well, you can't sue people for opinion, but, you know, basically what I'm saying is they don't know what they're talking about. If they're a popular streamer and they say this game belongs in the 8, you may want to rethink about them being your favorite streamer. I mean, seriously rethink about them. Their mentality, their world, their logic. This game has so many things that you could simply spend time investing in just the configuration of your game itself without even playing the goddamn game. It will take you hours to configure everything to your preference before you even start playing the game. Then there's the brightness, then there's the contrast, then there's the depth of field, then there's the hub, then there's ambient light, then there's motion blur, then there's glare, there's film effects, there's bloom, the elemental effects, there's color corrections, there's there's sun shadows. You can even have sun shadows if you want. When the last time a game gave you the ability to have character shadows, sun shadows, to remove the character shadows and to put the sun shadows, or vice versa? Not a lot of games do that. In fact, hardly any game does that. And there's going into voice volumes. You can change up. There's too many goddamn settings. Sound effects, how long you want sounds, how most you want sounds, speaking sounds, transmission sounds. Yes, like transmission sounds, like the car sounds. Your transmission in your car. You know, the thing that's connecting your goddamn engine to, you know, your steering wheel and so on and so forth. And then there's, well, I guess if you don't want to hear transmission like da 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 da. I guess you could turn that down depending on you. Then there's speech volume of characters. Then there's orders volume. Then there's different volume of different people speaking in the game. Most games have that as well. But most games don't have reverb quality. Most games don't have enable hint transmission. Most games don't have increase the, well, this is not needed. I don't believe increasing enable radio chatter in orbit is important. Well, yeah, actually it is, yeah. So yeah, they're all important. And then there's accessibilities. Most games have this. This game is about standard. So the only thing truly boring in this game and about standard are the obvious things. All games that have a system and all games that have accessibility are always going to be the same. Nothing is going to be there that's that important and relevant. However, if the game has an accessibility feature, has things with adjustment towards color, um, range of color, and color blindness, and disability adjustment features, then that's another plus you would add towards that game. And this game just happens to have that. Not towards you having no hands and you be disabled. Is with regards to you having color blindness or just being blind. Um, well, not being completely blind, but you having serious eye problems. So adjustment towards being colorblind is also in effect as well. Then there's the changing. You know what? This game has too many damn things. The game even has the ability to change of when you see colors for certain loot items, default items. You would think a game would just give, oh, we'll just give you the colors for the different things. We'll just give you the color for your health bar and for your overshields and for your vulnerability and for your character's life and everything. We'll just give that to you as standard. No, this game tells you, like, no, if you want to change that up, if you want to change up the position of where it is, you could apply it as well, the different colors towards it. So not only the game gives you the ability to have it, the game also gives you the ability to change it based on color blindness, because obviously it's necessary and it's very important. If you are susceptible to certain colors and they affect your eyes, obviously you will need to change those colors. Now, if you're comfortable with one type of color, then logically you would pick the color that's most comfortable towards your eyes. So I like that this is also a feature. Most games would not do this. Modern games now are doing this. Many modern games now, past 2020, are now doing this. But before, most games weren't doing this. This feature has been in this game for, I think, about a good 4 or 5 years. So it's been a good 4 to 5 years that the ability to change up your color blindness has been in the game. So it's not like it's something they just introduced yesterday. It's been here for quite some time. And then there's the account, which is not necessary for anyone to know because that's like directly towards you. So that was just option in a nutshell, me giving a general rundown of that in and of itself. And that was option. So I just introduced the story in a nutshell. Then I introduced combat to see how the combat of the Warframe works. Then I introduced how the weapon works. Then I introduced a little idea with regards to how option works and how quest works. Then I introduced how something else. But now I'm going to show the powers, just the powers of the Warframe themselves. For this one, we're not going to go with Banshee. I was going to go with Banshee, but I changed my mind. I'm going to go with the most obvious and simplest Warframe to use, Rhino. And since I sold my Blind Rage, he doesn't have Blind Rage anymore. So maybe it's not a good idea to pick Rhino. Alright, so we'll go with the poster boy. The poster boy of the company. Alright, Fortnite has his poster boy. Warframe has his poster boy as well. I'm going with Excalibur. And we'll test his powers. and the range of his powers, speed of his powers, the accessibility of his powers, the cooldown of his powers, the control of his powers, and the effects on the powers on the enemies per each enemy, or mostly with regards to AoE, if not per each enemy. So this will be just a standard test of Excalibur's powers on a general AoE location.
I thought we had seen the last of this dreaded Raptor project, but now the Corpus have escalated their interest and investments. We need to shut them down for good. The new Raptor production facility appears to be entirely underground. A crashed freighter on the surface has been masking its location. I fear they have developed even more deadly Raptor prototypes here. This may be difficult. The production facility is entirely automated. There is no way in without your Warframe being torn up in the assembly line. You'll have to figure out how to destroy it from the planet's surface.
Another thing a lot of people might not know is that when you play Warframe, if you notice, each Warframe runs and moves their body at a different speed.
We cannot risk the Corpus developing more advanced robotics. If the Corpus are building newer Raptors, it's imperative we destroy the prototypes and their means of production.
Like if you notice, Banshee was moving at a certain speed, but now
The
Excalibur
Corpus are
seems to be
using a
moving
gravity
little
conveyor
slower.
system to move product up to the surface. These will be heavily shielded.
His arms are even being swung in a different way as well. If you pay attention, like to these little small details, you'll be able to see these things. Each of these Warframe have been fashioned to move when they're running the same way, but they've been tweaked in a way in order to show or give a little bit of individuality. Even though they're all running the same.
Well done, Tenno.
To move a little
But you
bit
have to
faster,
completely
a little bit
cripple this
slower,
facility to halt Raptor production.
and behave a
Keep
little
at
bit
it.
different in the movement.
I'm seeing massive internal damage to their facility. Keep it up. The entire factory has gone critical. Great work, Tenno. The Corpus financiers will regret their investments today. Now, get out of there.
Even his bullet jump speed is a little slower, and movement in the air is slower.
Target down. Assassination contract complete. Great work, Tenno.
Now, why I say this game is, I'll wait for this to finish making his music. Mission complete music. Now, why I say this is a 9.3 to a 9.5 game is there are at least 6 to about 7 things that are wrong with the game that I found that are consistent. Actually, 6 things in the game that I found that are consistent. And since from its original inception to where it is now, it's gotten improved to a vast amount. So now it's in the 9.4 to 9.5 category. But there are 6 things that have been consistent throughout the years. 1, because it's an MMO game, there are always going to be bugs. So that's 1. 2, the story, with regards to when they first made the story in this game, it wasn't really a story. It was more like a mesh of different individual increments, stories that are meant for individual warframes. And then they fashioned it to be something that was more fluid down the road with the second dream and the war within to be an actual story. So there was never really a story there. So when they have campaigns, there wasn't really a story for a campaign. It then thereafter down the road became a story. So technically the game still doesn't have an actually sequential story. It has section stories. So it's not, and the reason why for that, why that is, and why it's been that way still, is because this game doesn't have a single individual that's running this campaign. These are all different combat types, warframes. Basically, it's an army, and you're basically one of the foot soldiers in this army. And so you wouldn't do things based on you're the main protagonist of the story, or your group or your people are the main protagonists of the story, like Dead Space or within Borderlands. You know, you're not the group of badasses hunters in Borderlands. The story revolves around you and the world. Now, in Warframe, nothing revolves around you. You're just in this world as one of the many combatants trying to keep the universe in peace. That's why the story doesn't follow from a beginning of how you got there to the end of the campaign and fighting a big boss towards the end. Because it doesn't end. The war that's going on within the Warframe origin system, the universe, the solar system, is a consistent one. So there's never going to be a story about an individual. You are never going to take the characteristics of a character like the Doom guy or Aloy or a Tarnish and the story being about you becoming the number one or defeating the bad guy at the end of the road. A Warframe is a foot soldier, one of many. And you, when you take on the Warframe and are representative of one of many foot soldiers, keeping the peace throughout the universe. A sentry, basically. Warframes are basically universal sentries. Badass, very tough sentries, but sentry. But that's why the story has never been about any individual one thing and has never been cohesive, because the Warframe does things like a ninja does contracts for its warlord or for its master. The story isn't about him. The story is simply is about him doing contract work to keep the peace. Now, if a story was about Hattori Hanzo, then it will follow a specific storyline path from beginning to end. Now, if Warframe was made that way, that's the way it was going to be. But it was never made that way. So anyone who's asking themselves, well, I don't like the story of Warframe, it's all over the place, that's because Warframe has never been a story about an individual group or an individual themselves. You have always been a hired gun, so to speak. That's that. So I've just introduced the powers, I've just introduced gun handling, and I just introduced a little bit of side story as well as options. So based on the range of Excal's abilities, I would say his range of his powers is pretty decent. And most Warframes apply to this same logic too. Radius has always been the thing. Radius, efficiency of power, power strength, and power output. And of course, duration. Almost forgot about duration. So yeah, and that's pretty much all there is to know about Warframe. Now that was just basically a small rundown of that, but the more complex part of Warframe is what I'm going to speak on. I'm only going to speak on this for about the next 30 minutes, but it won't be me fully speaking. It will be me doing missions and actions. You'll see it yourself. So I just spoke on things, and now I'm going to show those things. I showed some of it before in the sortie, but now I'm going to get real complex as to why this game is so awesome. Actions speak louder than words, and I'll just show it. Archons are already done, so I can't really show it in Archons. And I just did sortie, so I can't really show it there either. So what I'll do is, I'll just show it based on the Gift of the Lotus, since this is the 10th anniversary of Warframe. I'm going to show it based on the Gift of the Lotus alerts. There are two of them. So what I'm going to show now is not so much about firing and switching weapons and powers and any of that stuff, or movement, or the conserving of powers or the environment. What I'm going to show now is aiming down sights and how to adjust these things while in combat, to move faster, to move slower, to be more effective in the mission. I didn't speak on the rest of that before. So you typically want to always do these things before missions, not while in mission. Now, as you notice, I'm just aiming. As you're aiming, when you're not aiming down sights, your aim is much faster. You can move left, move right, you can shoot. Other option, you can still aim, you can still see the enemies. But your lock-on capabilities is much off, a little bit off, because you're not actually aiming to see your enemies. You're just using your judgment based on where you're placing your pointer. However, when you're aiming down sights, the camera all of a sudden slows down. You can't turn to the left and right as fast as you want anymore. But the beautiful part about this game is that you can adjust that. You can adjust how fast you move to the left or right, equally as fast as how you're moving to the left or right now. And it's not aiming down sight. I'm kind of in the middle of a mission, so I won't do that right now. It's not recommended for you to do it while you're right in the middle of the mission. You do that prior before. But you can do it in the mission if you have like downtime to see how to adjust, if you know where to look. You go in your options. Sensitivity, aiming, looking, scope sensitivity. Aiming down sights with scope allows you to how sensitive to move to left, right, up, down. Looking left to right when you're not aiming down sights allows you to see the environment and the world around you without being in this point. So it really depends. Do you want it to move left to right equal to that of it being in third person moving left to right and not aiming down sights? Or you want it to slow down and aiming down sights for more accuracy, or you want them both to be the same. It really depends on your gameplay. A lot of games don't offer you the ability to do that. Another reason why Warframe is awesome. It's really awesome. But that's just one thing. That's just one thing. One thing of the aiming down sights. There are more things with regards to the aiming down sights and the movement around. That's within that feature list. That's just one of many while you're in mission. Regarding movement and aiming.
The data you have collected here today will go a long way in supporting our cause.
So as you saw towards the end, I was locking in towards auto-targeting and targeting in association with melee. You could do that as well while you're moving and aiming down sight. So if you lock on target while you're aiming down sight and an enemy and you have melee assist on,
Operator, messages
you
have
can
arrived in your
lock
inbox.
into that enemy far quicker than if you didn't have it on. But if you don't want that assist, you want to do it yourself. You'll voluntarily choose to do that yourself as well if you want to. There's also the feature of swap weapon mechanics. You could choose to have it empty, or you could choose to have it enabled, so you could swap it fast at any time. There's also the reload with context action input, which is to tell you when you're reloading, or to show the animation of you reloading, or not to show the animation of you reloading. It just reloads. The reload time is still going to be there, but it's not going to show you doing the reload. It's a nice way of fooling your mind to think that you could go ahead and do other things while your weapon is reloading. So you can put that on if you want to, or if you don't want to. If you actually want to see the person reloading, which is kind of a nice thing for you to remind yourself that, okay, this person is now in reload. But if it's not there, then it might not be a good idea. But if you're too busy doing other things, then you can't put it on. And of course, the crouch and toggle, or the move and toggle. The toggle is always going to be a standard in most games. And Warframe is no different. And of course, the void swing is something that's been introduced in this game. So it's not just about double jumping. You can now jump, double jump. You can now double jump. I don't know what that person was doing. You can now double jump, and in operator mode, you can now sling to the left and sling to the right on your screen before you even land. So let's say you're aiming down sights, but you're not in your Warframe form. You're in your operator form. You're shooting your amp forward, and then you turn your amp to the left, to the right. You're shooting at different enemies, and then you decide to charge forward using your sling abilities while you're shooting or you're gliding. You can then, before you even land, interrupt yourself before you even land to move to the left and the right, which is a nice thing that's related towards aiming in mission, or moving in missions. So it's not just simply about aiming down sights or movement in the game. It's how you want to aim down sights and how you want to move in the game. So in the operator, when you're doing the sling, it's not about aiming down sight, it's simply about movement. So movement and aiming down sights, or just movement in general, is its own thing, while aiming down sights is its own thing, which is obvious. But like I said before, in this game, everything is synergy. So they don't operate independently of each other. They are in association with each other to a certain degree. This, unlike many games, does this, while those games don't do this. That's another reason why Warframe is great. See, the 6 things that takes Warframe out of the top tier, top 9, top 9.8, 9.9 game, 10 out of 10 game, is simply the fact that it doesn't have organization towards a story. It has bugs like most MMORPG games. It sometimes feels like it's sandboxy, like they don't know where they're trying to go with regards to certain things. They took away the trials from the game, where they used to have trials in the game. Though I notice it's not a sandbox game. It doesn't feel like a sandbox game, but sometimes it does. It's definitely not a sandbox, but sometimes it does. They took away trials from the game. What else? Those are the four things. Of course, loading in sometimes takes a long. Glitching is one thing. Sometimes loading in takes a long time. That's the fifth thing. And there's just one other. I believe it has to do with. It either has to do with the company's ability to fix certain things in the game when it needs to be fixed on time, or it's not that, because they're pretty fast with their fixing, so it's definitely not that. It's one other thing that I found in regards to the game that's still the same. I don't remember what that one other thing is, but I know it's not loading, I know it's not bugs, I know it's not the story, I know it's not with regards to bosses and stuff, or with regards to content, or loading. So here's the thing. Here are the 5 ones, the main ones that's always going to be in the game. Maybe the 6th one is me just being nitpicky. Bugs, loading, a story not being that cohesive or connected that much. Bosses aren't like to the level of, say, like Elden Ring, or bosses aren't that interesting, though they are bosses and mini bosses. But the bosses are fun to fight. They just don't feel like big, huge threat bosses. And the 5th one was, see, that's what I'm trying, if I'm getting stuck remembering these things, there are technically only 5 of them. Because the game has plenty enough weapons and plenty enough warframes, and has a good fashion sense and style sense. Its menu system is outstanding and great. Oh yeah, that's the 5th one. It sometimes can feel a little sandboxy, like it doesn't have somewhere it's trying to get to. So those are the 5 things that I found out with regards to the games that are actually bad in the game. That are only the things that I found. The only things that I found that are bad in the game. There's probably a 6th one, if I could remember what that 6th one was. But I knocked this game down to a 9.4. In my book, the game is a 9.4. If you're truly a nitpicky person, like really nitpicky, you could find a 7th thing that's wrong with this game. That's legitimately a 7th thing that's a bad thing. See, when you're finding these points to take away from the game, it has to be something that makes the game uninteresting, that don't make you want to come back to it. Not something that's small that you can bypass. It has to be something that's uninteresting, that doesn't make you want to come back to it. Them taking away trials. Oh yeah, there's the 6th thing, the trials. Them taking away trials wasn't one of those good ideas. That's why I say the game falls into the 9.4 territory for me. I have the game as a 9.4 for me. Generally, somebody who is nitpicky would probably drop it down even one more point to a 9.3. And someone who's not as nitpicky, and who's definitely not me, will up it one more point to a 9.5. So this game falls in the range of 9.3 to about 9.5 in total. Anyone who has this game lower than, like, say, a 9.3, they have it like at a 9.1 or 9.2, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Because if they have this game in the 9.1, 9.2, you have to put every single MMO game, RPG game, in the low 9s then. Because every single MMORPG game has bugs, bad loading. Sometimes they don't have interesting enemies to fight. Many times they don't have interesting enemies to fight. And they take away certain things. They nerf certain things. They nerf weapons, or they nerf a mission, or they take away a trial or something. So nerfing missions and took away the trials was the thing for me that made it the sixth thing. Because to me, I guess you could say nerfing weapons and stuff in this game is necessary towards the enjoyment of everyone. So they're always going to nerf it. But sometimes the nerf is a bad thing. But it's not so much a bad thing that would take a point away from it, because sometimes they nerf stuff and they make it better. That's why I don't consider the nerf to be a bad thing in this game, because sometimes they could nerf something and it's vastly improved. Or they nerf a Warframe and they made it even better than it was before. So it's a balancing effect. So both the positive and the negative cancel each other out. So there are technically only 6 things in this game that are actually truly bad. That's why this is a 6.4 game. I mean 9.4 game. Anyway, for a 9.3, 9.4, and 9.5 game. Anyone who has this game in the 9s, they don't know what they're talking about. Anyone who has this game in the 8s, simply is a goddamn criminal and a moron. And you should really rethink about even subbing to them. And yes, I call them a moron because you got to be goddamn stupid. Been playing this game for like 7 years. No, it's going to be almost about 8 years now. 7 to 8 years. I would say a total of 7 years right now, and a couple of months in where we are right now to coming up to its 8th year. So I've been playing the game almost as long as the game exists. The game has existed for 10 years. This is the 10-year anniversary of Warframe. I've been playing this game for almost equal to the amount of time this game has existed. Just 3 years short of it, or 2.5 years short of its original time. But if you really want to round it off, I guess you could say 3 years. I mean 7 years. I'm playing this for a total of 7 years, if you don't want to include that near 8th year. So after 7 years, and I'm still playing this game, 7 years in, anyone who has this game in the 8, you should laugh at them, make fun of them continuously. I'm telling you to do that to them, because they are idiots and they don't know anything. I play Neverwinter all the time, and I hear these assholes talk about it all the time in Neverwinter, that I'll never play that game. I'm into D&D. Like, you're a goddamn idiot. Stay in your D&D world, because you know nothing about video game. You are what gamers call a naturalist or a traditionalist. You are stuck in this type of traditional way of gaming, and associated with this traditional way of gaming, playing, and this type of people. You are prestige to only this type of world that you hang out in. So when you say that, oh yeah, I'm a die-hard D&D game fan, or I'm a die-hard Warframe game fan, your limits towards your imagination is fixated only on that type of genre. You won't go beyond that type of genre. That's why you see people who play Sword and Shield games, they go play more Sword and Shield games. They don't try to go into games like Doom and stuff. It's not their comfort zone. That's why they're goddamn idiots. They don't know anything. They're not the people to go to judge anything with regards to gaming, because their favoritism in a specific genre category. Their idea and their minds aren't broad overall in many different categories. They don't see the bigger picture. They're closed-minded in one single thing that they're good at, but they don't see the overall value of the gaming world as a total. They don't see it from our point of view. They don't see it from the range it could go. They see it from a narrow vision point of view. Same as people who play Destiny. They would never play a game like Mario. Or they would never play a game like a competition or a competitor's game. They would never play a game like Fortnite because it's a competitor. You know. Or they would never play a game like Madden or any sports game, because sports is bad in their minds because it's associated towards a narcissistic, male chauvinist way of existing. Like, this is the way a man's supposed to be and to behave. And these are manly things. sports is a manly thing. Driving a car is a manly thing. You go play a fantasy Japanese game, girly game, then that's not manly. So I'll never fuck with that. I never listened to those, never went to morons or anyone in any game. They know nothing about games. This game belongs in the Nine territory, and I feel kind of ashamed and insulted that it wasn't recommended as be one of the game of the years for when it was originally had come out, and not for just when it originally had come out, but for the year that passed, a full year passed, for the year that came after when it originally came out, or the year after that. I found it insulting that the year after that, the year before, and the year after that it came out, it wasn't recommended to be a game of the year category. And then after New War came out, I was insulted that it wasn't game of the year category or recommended for it. And even when the Second Dream came out, or the War Within came out, especially when the Second Dream came out, I was insulted that it wasn't recommended to be a game of the year contender after Second Dream, because that's when Warframe was at its crescendo heights after Second Dream, because the opera was introduced, void uses of void and void weapons were introduced, Eidolons were introduced, and then Plays of Eidolon came out. So after Operators was introduced and after Plays of Eidolon was introduced, Warframe should have been recommended as one of the Game of the Year contenders, and it was voted on to be one, but it wasn't in those selected to be the Game of the Year. And I think the main reason for that is, as I said before, Warframe's story is not bounded to an individual or a group of people. Every single goddamn game I've ever seen to win a Game of the Year is surrounded around an individual or person or a thing going towards a specific end. Because every human being on this planet is a complete fucking moron and believes that a good game has to be associated with an individual or group of people trying to do a thing to accomplish a thing at the end. Without that in the game, then the game cannot be considered a contender to be a Game of the Year. Horizon, recommended to be Game of the Year. Elden Ring, Doom, Super Mario, Zelda. All these things are associated with a person trying to do a thing to get towards the end of a thing, or a group of people trying to do a thing to get towards the end of a thing. Are you telling me a game cannot be a Game of the Year because if it doesn't have a story, then that means it doesn't have the right to be a Game of the Year? I believe only morons believe this, and the people who've allowed games to win Game of the Year simply because a story has to be in the forefront for it to win and to be a Game of the Year is complete balderdash and incompetence. A story has to sell a game if it has a story and it's part of the game, but if a game doesn't come with a story, then it shouldn't take away from it being a potential to win Game of the Year. I think a lot of people don't understand this. That's why I sometimes shake my head and I keep quiet. I realize all these people, so-called people who think they understand games or know about games, don't know anything about games. Know a single thing about games. What they're doing is they're trying to push in the logic of human nature and what human nature feels in association with the game world and in association with what makes money. If you're thinking about things from what makes money and bringing money to the table of the gaming world and what brings more people to see it, then that's a money thing. That has nothing to do with the game thing. That's an outside factor, which is important, but if the outside factor is more important than the inside factor, the game itself, then you are looking at the wrong thing, and you're not really a professional gamer or professional critic to criticize a game. You have to look at the bigger picture. Look on the outside and look on the inside. You have to play the director, and you have to play the person in the seat watching the damn movie that the director made. You have to be both people. Otherwise, you will never truly understand. So that's it for Warframe. That's Warframe in a nutshell. I showed the ability. I showed how they move and operate. And I'm just going to play this game for like 15 more minutes. And keep silent. And let the abilities do their work. That's a good 10 years of Warframe in a nutshell. 10 years of everything. Oh yeah, and there's one other thing they introduced. Archon shards. Archon shards. They've now introduced boosting capabilities towards weapons and towards warframes. So now you also have the ability to boost yourself to become even stronger than you were before. Basically to get yourself to greater heights. So Warframe already basically walking tanks and walking basically juggernauts, but now they add the ability to add crystal shards, which are power shards, to boost the Warframe's capability to make his power better, their powers better, and their movement faster, and their weapons shoot faster. So that's where we are right now with regards to Warframe. So I'm going to try to show as many of the locations that have been released since the original game to its beta, and to show how they've elevated from where they are now, from where they were to where they are now. So I'm going to attempt to try to show all of them. It's going to be a bit difficult, but it's going to be a nice attempt. Why did I pick this dude? Yeah, I don't mind picking the dude that looks like a Bloodborne character. Alright. So, the first thing with regards to the game, he woke up on Earth. But before the first thing of that, this whole map looked completely different. All of this, these planets. It was just a blue background with some opacity. Now it actually looks like a solar system with stars in the back, lines and stuff. Why did they take this path, and why did they decide to use this? It's very Herculean, very astrology-like take on planets' alignments and the naturalization of planets separated from each other. Why? Because that makes more sense. Natural relays is an obvious thing when it comes to gaming, and putting lines when connecting from place to place is simple. To me, it looks kind of silly, and it takes away from the fact that it actually looking smooth by making lines all over the goddamn place. But it's a easy way to show the player where they have to go next. So if this lights up, this lights up. If it didn't have a line, then you'll still know that this is where you have to go. But I guess something lighting up and showing a line is easier for them to understand where they have to go, because if the line pops up or start blinking all the way over here, but you have to go over here, you will automatically assume you have to go over here because the line is blinking over here, but you have to go over here. So by now, them putting lines to show you the direction where you have to go, it's make it easier. So yeah, this was the first location when you first got into the game. Not Mantle, but Earth was the first location. And also, original game, there was no stars or sky in the background where you see this things rotating or levitating. That didn't exist.
Excellent work. We'll interrogate the captive back at base. Your part is done here, Tenno.
So yeah, this environment looks the same as it was. It's weird. It looks the same as it was 10 years ago. And there's only one thing, no, four things that really changed it. To the human trained eye, makes it look different. Lighting, shadows, rendering, and I can't leave the mission. I have to go to extraction. Well, it's going to cool down anyways. It's 59 seconds. So rendering, lighting effects, and let me look at it some more. Lighting has changed, rendering changed. That's about it. 3 or 4 things. Now, all they did is basically, I mean, if you really want to consider, there are actually 5 things. They added more models and design models for certain places. So they added more models. They rendered the models more. They added more adjusted lighting and shadows to them, and maybe some particle effects. So I would say about total 4 to 5 things were added since the game originally came out 10 years ago towards objects in the environment, not towards the environment. See, you have to understand the difference. Not towards the environment itself, towards objects in the environment. See, because this out there, that window out there, well, let me go outside. Come on. Okay, I can't go up any higher. So this out there is the distance from where you're looking at that sky at the back to where the Warframe is right here. That's the environment. And these trees right here are also part of the environment. But then there are objects that are placed within the environment. Those objects right down there, over there, and certain rocks as well that have been melded and molded to a fashion to look like the environment. So you can't tell the difference between the environment and the objects placed within the environment. That way, when you slam into certain trees or slam into certain objects and move past certain leaves and stuff, they react towards your movement simply because they're meant to be objects within the static environment or the map painting. So I would say about 4 or 5 things have been added since the original. Good rendering, lighting and shadows, particle effects, some better textures, and maybe one more thing. Reaction of effects. Because having water fall down, or should I say the water from the stream, is one thing.
What do you think about Limbo being nerfed?
Then the speed and the reaction time is another thing. Limbo being nerfed is, if the nerf is something that will make Limbo better, then it's a good thing. But if it's the nerf that makes him worse, then it's extremely bad, because Limbo has never been anyone's favorite, and he's always been considered bad to most general players, not to professional players. And since most people are general players, or the majority, if they've nerfed him to be even worse than he is, then he's definitely going to not get anyone's favor and fall in the bottom of the tier list in regards to Warframes. That's my opinion on Limbo. So far, everything is good. Environment is good, texture is good. 5 things has been added since about a total of 5 things have been added towards objects and environments since the original games. And that's just objects and environments. That's not the environment themselves. That's just objects and environments. That's not the warframes. That's not the warframe weapons. That's not accessibilities. That's not the inventory management system. That's not the text rollovers. That's not sound effects. That's not visual effects. That's just the objects themselves. So that's 5 things for just that one type of thing within the game that's been improved since 5 years ago. And there are many things to improve. Many things. Movement of the warframe is another thing. How fast does the warframe moves when you use your controller? How fast it moves to the left? How fast it moves to the right? Up, down, jump, bounce. How fast it slide? How fast can you move to the left and to the right with regards to it in movement? So let's see how fast that could go. That's insane. That's insane. I literally, actually, let me count how many times I did maneuvers before I hit the ground. I'm going to jump in the air and see how many times I maneuvered before I even hit the ground. Three or 4. Let's try that again. Oh shoot, wrong thing. Okay, so let's try that again. I'll jump forward this time. 1, 2, 3, 3. Do 3 things before I even hit the ground. 1, 2, 3. 2, 3. Try that again. 1, 2, 3. 4. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So you could do at least 3 things before you even hit the ground. You could do at least 3 things before you even hit the ground. Another thing I would add towards Warframe that's different from other games. Most games you will be able to do one thing when you do something in the air, and then another thing, and then boom, you hit the ground. This game, because it has the boat jump effect, allows you to propel high into the air, which allows you to do more maneuvers in the air before you hit the ground. A total of 3.
Well, Limbo is bad in the hands of players don't know what they doing, but they nerfed him. Now Eximus units can hit him even if he is in the V.
Yep, totally bad. Very bad. I guess because Wimbo was considered OP because he was basically vulnerable in his own little pocket dimension. And people complain about Limbo being too OP. Like, come on, man. Like, leave the guy alone. Let at least... You see, the thing is, each Warframe has their own speciality. Valkyrie's speciality is to turn on her 4th and stand there with her arms folded, and you could be punching her in the face, and she won't be moving a single inch, because her 4th ability allows her to activate an invincibility, which is basically channeling her powers, basically the orb powers, the energy that she's given, and channel that energy that she's getting from those orbs, and make it those energy from those orbs like a coated armor. So when you're punching the Warframe, you're not technically hitting the Warframe. you're hitting the energy of that powers, but it's like concentrated powers surrounding not Banshee, Valkyrie. Same thing goes for Nyx. The energy is sucked into the Warframe and is channeled out through a concentrated type of orb around the Warframe, making the Warframe invincible. So if Nyx is able to keep hers and Valkyrie is able to keep hers, then why not allow Limbo to keep his? Each Warframe has their specific skill set. And I think the main reason why they nerfed Limbo is because Limbo interrupts other Warframe from doing their abilities when they're trying to do things. You never see, the thing is with regards to Limbo is you never want to, as a player in any game, interrupt other players' enjoyment in doing what they're doing. And when you create a Warframe that kind of interrupts other players from doing what they're trying to do, such as if you freeze an enemy with Limbo's ability, if someone was merely hitting that enemy and the enemy was taking critical hits and almost about to die and you freeze them, you now rob that person of them actually doing that finishing move because that character, that thing is now frozen. So the person has to go out of their way to tell you to take off that ability so that they could finish off that person. They don't want to talk to you from the very goddamn beginning. Now they have to talk to you, a perfect stranger, to do something because you had that something on. That's another reason why a lot of people never like Limbo, because Limbo force people who don't want to talk to each other to talk to each other. That's one of the main things. Limbo is like a prick Warframe, but he's also a very good Warframe. So yeah, that's basically Warframe in a nutshell. I think I said everything I'm supposed to say. So this was one of the areas. The first area that you originally found your ship.
Lol, yeah.
Yeah, Limbo's a prick Warframe. He's a very good Warframe, but he's kind of a prick. He forced people to talk to each other when people don't really want to talk to each other. Like, I know a lot of people play this game just to play it. And the moment they get upset, they start to talk to you, you take them out of their comfort zone because you force them from putting down their coffee to now having to have to text to tell you to do something. And they don't want to be told to do something. They just want to do their thing. That's the problem with Limbo. You interrupt someone's enjoyment. Like, if you're going to assist people with your powers, it's to assist them, but you cannot interrupt their enjoyment. You interrupt or, make them feel a certain way, then they start to get upset. Moving on to the next. Let's see. Okay, so the first place was Earth, first introduced. The next place goes to, I'm not going to go to all these planets, but what I'm trying to say is I'm going to go to four planets in total. And that's basically me skipping 3 years per each of those 4 planets. So first year, Earth, Venus, Mercury, Mars, and the standard solar system. The next big story with regards to Warframe came in the second dream. And that was on the planet, or should I say on the moon, on Lua. When this was introduced, this thing was around the moon. So at the very beginning of the game, it had this spherical attachment, this mechanical relays around the moon. So when you go to the moon, you're not actually totally, completely on, you are on the surface of the moon, you're running on the moon, but you're also running on these things, or these circular things that surround the moon as well. So sometimes when you go to an area and you look at it within a node in the area, those area nodes that's on the moon are connected towards these relay stations, or these way connectors around the moon. That's why when you're running at certain areas on the moon, all of a sudden you found yourself within an empty area and you see a long looking winding curved, like huge, extremely big looking curved thing around the area where you stop off to see into space. That's this right here. And sometimes you could go right on top of it. You won't even know that you're on top of it because it's covered by
Who's
gravel.
your favorite Warframe?
My favorite Warframe is my favorite Warframe is two Warframes. One of them is Saren, and the other one is well, actually, now that I think about it, Saren was my favorite. And Nyx were my favorite back in the days, but with the release of these past 4 new Warframes, I would say my favorite has now shifted from being Siren and Nyx from the original to now being Nyx and it's very difficult to say. Actually, you know what? The best way for me to know is sometimes I need to be reminded by just looking at them. It's definitely not Baruch. So let me just look at my list. Ash. What does Ash do? Kill a boy. He kills things. Fast. Flash. Enemy skin. Atlas. Big boy. 2 bodyguards. Too slow. Banshee. Crowd control. Lock on. Lock off. Keep silent, but kind of squishy. Baruch. Killer, but in the 180. Caliban. Good crowd control, but weak from behind. And sometimes from the side as well. Chroma was great back in the days. Good buffer. Good killer. Still hard for him to die. It's kind of a selfish Warframe. It's only unselfish is when he's buffing. But he's still good. With them changing Volt to being good DPS, he kind of became irrelevant. Citrine, possibly my new favorite. Still, don't know yet. Ember was better back in the days than compared to her nerf. A lot of people disagree, but like, you never play Ember when she was first introduced. Equinox, questionable, half-half. Excalibur, Killer Boy, 180. High DPS, very powerful. Easy to get killed unless a healer is there to help him past a certain point. Frost, good defense. Good killer, good stripper. Unfortunately, Gara became better at defense. Gorilla, good killer, good health replenisher. Unfortunately, she's 180 as well. Enemy shooter from behind, she's dead. Gauss, fast boy, speedy. Problem, he runs into a damn wall because he's so fast. Stun locked by his own animation, boom, dead. Grendel, good feeder. Requires a lot of precision and understanding of how he uses all his talents at the same time. Not so good for everybody. Jiren was good, not so good anymore after I tested her out. About average. Harrow, possibly my favorite. Right up there with Citrine. However, he's not a tank. Not good. Hildren, good for crowd control, good for stripping. If you don't know how to use her ability to take back shields to return to her, she's going to die. You have to know her open door time or closed door time with regards to shield gating and taking shields away from enemy. If you don't know, she's not good. Hydroid, good for hiding, good for taking armor from enemies, good for farming, not so good for long survival, not good. Inaros, good for long survival, good for stripping armor, good for enemies, killing enemies. However, he doesn't have shield to interrupt them taking away from health and armor. Good thing about shields, The enemies have to get to a shield first before they get to health and armor. If a shield charged fast first, they got to take down the shields again to get to health and armor. Not having shields, cannot put him as my number one. Doesn't really need it, but if he had it, he would have been my perfect number one. Ivara. Potential to be my number one, simply because she can stay invisible. The moment the invisibility comes off, he's dead in the water. Not good. Korra. Possibly also my number one. Actually, Korra and Citrine. Possibly next to Nyx. That's my number one. Korra, Citrine, Korra. Sorry, Citrine, Korra. I think about Lavos. Not average. Limbo been nerfed, not good. Loki's still badass as hell. Off invisible, dead. As fast as he go invisible, AoE effect, dead. Mag. Squishy can do 3 hours by herself, but you will require a healer to assist her to do that 3 hours. By herself, only by herself, she could still survive, but she needs support from droids. Possibly also there with Korra. Korra Mag. Who kills each other first? Who kills each other faster? Korra has a better transferability within exhume, subsume abilities, far better than that of Mags. I will go with Korra, simply because her subsume abilities can go towards any Warframe and make them better. Mag is limited to certain specific that she cannot go towards. Mesa. Very good. Good crowd control. Subsume abilities is good. Good for transferring as well. Not best. Without her ability to turn off her shatter shield. Shooting off, making projectile weapons not hit her has nothing to do with butchers coming behind her or at the side of her and one-shotting her with their butcher knives. Not good. Mirage, also squishy. They bypass with her low illusion. The AoE effect hits her. Dead. Necros can resist a lot. Good farmer, good ranger, good assister. Transfer abilities, not so good. No. Nezo, same. Transfer abilities, not so good. Good tank. Not so good in supports either, no. Knight is also a selfish boy. Very good. Good survivor. Can last very long survival missions. However, it takes time for him to even get off those supports from jump. For him to get those stacks. Not good. Nova. Average at best. Good for helping. Good for crowd control. Not for good for long survival. Next, obviously, is my number one. Good for everything. Before I even go all the way down, I know well, actually, no. I still don't know. I was just about to say Trinity. But I realized she got killed by an Archon. One of the Archons when I was soloing the Archon. And I had her at 285 duration with regards to her heal. And she still got killed. But she's right up there. Not many people can do solo an Archon by themselves. Inaros can do it. Not really. That dude needed me to be in the mission just to be as a distraction. Rhino. Easy player base, can assist everyone. Easy to learn abilities, easy transfer abilities. Good support, good crowd control. General can be used by everyone. Very fun to use, very entertaining. However, his other than his roar. It's too easy. Sometimes people like easy, but too easy. Past a certain point, he gets killed. If you're fighting level, like say level 200 enemies, they will knock off his iron armor real quick. No matter, even if you have it at 328 or 350, that that steel fiber iron armor will go real fast over time. You need something that's not based on turning on the armor, something based on the duration period before it goes off, or based on energy to sustain yourself for long periods of time. Siren, good for crowd control. Said she was in my number one because she could kill everything fast and survive longer with her healing factor. Like she was like a Wolverine. If she cast her second, she could heal herself slowly over time or fast over time, depending on how you're using her. However, she takes severe damage. Even if she's fast to heal, she'll eventually go down if she's surrounded by a lot of enemies. Steinax, hell no. Titania, possibly, if she's in butterfly form. If she's not in butterfly form, then she'll be dead. Trinity, doesn't matter if she's in any form. She could just run up in a group of enemies, stand up right in front of a bunch of exhumans, level 100, level 200. As long as she has high duration, as long as she has energy, and as long as she's healing on her fourth, she can basically kill all of them by herself before she goes down. And she's good for supporting people. She would probably be my third best Warframe. Valkyrie is just a cheeser. I don't like to use her because she's obviously for the win. Same as my Nyx, but Nyx is more helpful than her. Like for the win, if you desperately need to survive in a situation you want to be immortal, pick Valkyrie. Have a 175% efficiency. Have a prime flow on, and then also have. I never put this on. I should have put it on. Where is it? Where is it? More energy. Yeah. Endure and drift. Like if you want a Warframe that has the ability that runs on something per second, like Valkyrie runs on energy per second to stay immortal, you require a lot of energy and sustaining that energy. It's not just about energy, it's about sustaining the energy. 175 energy and enduring drift and prime flow. See, prime flow on and remove this. Prime flow on, enduring drift, arcane energize, and an efficiency of 175 will allow, if and only if, and eventually hers will run out of time, if her energy spent per the second is less than 1.63, and she can't go below 1.63, so eventually I would say within a full minute, 1 to 2 minutes, or 1.5 minutes, she will eventually run out of energy, and she can't be invincible. But you never have to fight any enemies for longer than 1 minute in invincible state. In fact, it's recommended that you should never fight an entire area of enemies for a full minute in invincible form. 30 seconds is the most you should stay in invincible form, because she does have shields, she does have a decent amount of armor, and she does have weapons and other things that she can use. Her shields are low, but if you have shield gating associated with this Warframe and not based on melee, then you could use that. Or if you want to actually add more shields to this Warframe, like say add 100 more shields, they would have to go through the shields before they kill her, which they'll go through real easy. When that happens, you just turn on the fourth. But because our shields are so low, I always say Valkyrie's a no for me. Our shields are really low. And of course, Ureli's bad. And of course, Zaku's about average. And Vauban was good back in the days. They nerfed him to make him better. I'm not sure about that whole satellite orbit blast from space thing. It's a good thing to use when you want to clear out someone that's very tough or a group of people are crowding up. But it's not like it's a one-shotter thing. It takes a lot of health from enemies that are from level 0 to level 100 pretty well. It doesn't kill them level 100 straight out. But let's say you're fighting level 150 enemies or 160. Probably won't even take 25% of their health. Or if it does take 25% of health, they'll probably kill you before it even works. So no. Volt or Bastille is good though. But once again, if you're fighting against Exumus that bypasses your Warframe's powers, he's dead. Volt, very good, very fast. Enemies can't catch him that well. High DPS, can kill enemies real quick. But he has to stay behind his shields in order to survive against level 100s and higher enemies. If he doesn't, if he takes critical damage, he's dead in the water. Aruna, good crit, good attacker. Only issue with her, she's melee centric. She has to close in the gap between her and the enemy. She does have something to keep enemies at bay with a crowd control, and then she goes in for the melee. It's more like she has to go in for the melee rather than to cast an ability to keep them at bay and then go in for the melee. So when they built her, they weren't really thinking with regards to that. Wisp, possibly in my number 1 as well. But you really have to depend on her abilities to stun people for her to survive a lot. If she starts to get crowded, that whole being a ghost while levitating in the air ain't gonna save her. Wukong, very good with crits, very good with melee. Could use Celestial Twin with a 145 range to knock enemies if they get too close. Slam onto the ground while you're busy shooting in a different direction. Very fun, very good. Unfortunately, I believe this Warframe in a solo mission can't go beyond 1 hour by himself, simply because he's mostly based on melee damage rather than gun damage. He has to close the gap. Zaku is, like I said, is good, but he's about, I mean, he's real good if he knows how to have power strength to strip weapons all the time. But the issue is when you get in contact with Exumus once again, that won't work. Dead. Really, like I said, not good Warframe at all. Zephyr, not that good of a Warframe either. Though her third ability is pretty damn OP if you give it some good range and good power. And her multiplier, of course, to her speed is also pretty good. So she's about as average. So the only Warframe other than Nyx that I found that I was very interested in is Trinity, Siren, not Protea, not Octavia, Trinity, Siren, and Rhino, and Korra and Mag. And between all the different Warframes I just mentioned, other than the Nyx being one of the number 1s, the only one that, in my mind, flashes higher than anyone else is Mag and Korra. Because if Mag could go 3 hours solo with the support of drones to help her in stun locking enemies within a 280 globe and sucking them all in, and keeping enemies at bay. As long as she has drones to back her up and keep them stationary, she could do it for no problem. 1 hour, 2 hours, no problem by herself. That's what makes her OP. And I believe Korra could do the same thing as well. So my favorite Warframes are in twos, just like I said. Originally it was Nyx and Saren. Now it's Nyx and Korra. So to answer the question to the person, if the person is still here to ask the question, it wasn't as simple as just saying you have to evaluate everything. This is what I'm saying. People who talk about Warframe and say they understand Warframe or they understand gaming, you have to understand everything in its scientific form before you actually gives an answer. Just picking something doesn't mean it's actually good. Here. Okay, so that's my answer. Based on the science and the logic of the characters, the most obvious choice to use that's efficient, effective, supportive, pre-tank, as well as can transfer of abilities towards other Warframes, and is a good crit and OP'er in certain things, and overall rounded Warframe, I would say would be Korra, and an OP Warframe, however, I would say would be Nyx. However, the problem with Nyx is if you don't have on that ultimate ability, which is assimilate, she's locked into an ability where she can't limit her movement and speed. So if you're in a PvP match and you're trying to roll around to shoot in an enemy, they could jump around you and keep jumping around you and wait till your energy runs out, and then they could kill you with regards to that. However, if you have on the mods that I have on Nyx, it won't matter. They would just give up. That's the sick part about Nyx. They would just give up over time, because once her fourth ability is on and you have this on, if you have this mod set on your Nyx, if you have Arcane Energize or Full Arcane Energize, if you have Energy Siphon on, Coaction Drift on, Enduring Drift on, and Prime Flow on, if you have these 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if you have these 5 mods on, and if you have Streamline on and Fleeting Expertise on your Nyx, it doesn't matter who you're fighting or how long you're going to be fighting them. Her energy is never going to go away. I've tested it on a video before in a mission where that mission was supposed to have finished 30 minutes ago. And I had the bubble on for a fourth ability for more than 30 minutes. And I voluntarily took it off because her energy wasn't dropping. I didn't use any energy pass to turn it on or to give her more juice. I might have done it once, but if you only need to do it once and never have to do it again in 30 minutes, then that already tells you how OP this character is. So yeah, the answer is Nyx and Korra. And if you don't like female Warframes as your number ones, then the answer to male Warframes would be Rhino and what's his name? And Wukong. It would be Rhino and Wukong. Rhino for crowd control, Wukong for melee. And you're saying to yourself, well Rhino isn't crowd control. Oh yeah. Let me correct myself. It's not a Rhino. It's Wukong and Chroma. Trust me, Chroma is a shitty Warframe when it comes to DPS. But the point of Chroma, when I say it's Wukong and Chroma, is not that he is shitty when it comes to DPS. It's his survivability. If you understand Chroma's kit, Chroma will never die in mission, no matter who he's fighting. And he doesn't have to build up his stacks like in Arrows. And he doesn't have to, do some crazy thing like Rhino in order to have a certain amount of power for his fibers to work. He could go beyond the capabilities of steel fibers and survive. So my favorite is Chroma simply based on, for male Warframes, is his survivability against all enemies, as well as Wukong, because he's a good melee guy, and he's, when it comes to favorite for...
What about Revenant and Vauban?
Vauban is good for crowd control, but he's going to die a lot past enemies past 160 to any enemies that fall into the 150 to 200 range. Vauban's going to die a lot. He could take level 100 enemies, but by the time you get to like 150, he's going to die a lot. Same for like Wukong. That's why Wukong is not really my true favorite Warframe. He's the favorite of my male Warframes. My true favorite has always been Nyx and Korra, because their survivability is far higher than that of Wukong. But for my male survival Warframes, it will always be Wukong, and it will always be Chroma, more than any other Warframe from the male side. I know a lot of people select Inaros, but past a certain point, if Inaros run into an Exumus that steals health, he's fucked. It doesn't matter how much armor he has; they could bypass his armor and steal his health, and he's dead. So yeah, that's when armor health. I mean, when armor doesn't make any sense, and it's not rational, is when an Exumus comes in that likes to steal health, and it will kill him real fast. So yeah, you have to evaluate. You have to think of the science of Warframe, or the math of Warframe, or the logic of Warframe, whichever one you want to use. You have to understand how their kit works and how the enemy works with regards to their kit. There are 5 different Exumus types. There are probably 5, yeah. There's the electricity one, there's the red one that's stealing your health, there's the nullifier one, there's the magnetism one, and there's the fire one. So fire, nullifier, magnetism one, the stealing energy, electricity one, and the toxic one. Basically all the elements in Warframe in one fell swoop. If all 5 of those enemies are in mission and they're fighting you in a long survival, if your Warframe cannot deal with all 5 of this type of enemies, that Warframe is not that good. You have to have a Warframe that could adjust to any type of situations and survive a long, arduous journey, as well as understand that it could adjust to any type of enemy type that is fighting. Nyx can bypass all those because all she has to do is turn on the 4th ability. However, she does have to watch out for the Exumus that could turn off her powers. Once you see that big boy coming, you just aim a rifle towards him, and kill only him while you're getting fired from multiple different angles and not giving a shit because you cannot die. All you gotta do is kill him. Once he's dead, you just go back to having fun and drinking coffee while your bubble is still on. Put down your coffee and then go back to kill him. That said, Korra doesn't fall on the same window. She doesn't have an invulnerability to lock herself off. She has to do a little bit more work, but that's where her bubble comes into play. You give a good range in her bubble, give a good power in her bubble. You might be able to pick up your coffee and take a few sips, but you can't drink the whole damn thing. You just got to take a few sips and then get back to work. Not many Warframes can do that. Limbo can't do that anymore. Frost definitely can't do that anymore. Gyro can't do that anymore. The only Warframe I've tested that could, get a few sips off for a cup of coffee or, take a bite off of a sandwich, put your sandwich down, and then pick up your controller, has been Korra and Nyx and Valkyrie. Those are the only Warframes that I could literally just get up, go to the bathroom and, take a good wash of the face or pick up something, eat something, and don't have to worry about quickly picking up the controller unless I see Exumus or a specific type of enemy in. So my favorite Warframes are typically the invulnerable ones as well as the near invulnerable ones based on non-invulnerability, but based on how you've trained yourself to modify your Warframes. So you have to really understand how Korra Kit works, and you have to understand how to mod her, because Korra is not invulnerable and invincible like Nyx and Valkyrie. She can die if you're not paying attention. But once you understand how a bubble works and how often you should keep that bubble working and how often you should be moving around in said bubble, and how you should go in from Warframe mode to operative mode and then shut it off, you'll survive for a very long time. Because when you go into operative mode and you shut yourself off, the Warframe is still taking damage. So by the time you get back into Warframe, you go down, it's because you allowed the Warframe to take a lot of damage while you're in operative mode. It is best to move to a certain specific area while you're inside your bubble, or stay casting on abilities while your bubble's up, just for like 5 to 10 seconds. While you pick up a coffee or drink something, and then that's it. But next, you never have to worry about that. You could go to the bathroom, use the restroom, wash your hands, take a bath, come back, and she still has the bubble on, if you have those mods on. And if her energy within her energy pool is maxed out. So that's it for Warframe. I basically showed everything. That was part of the 10 years. That's a general description of Warframe. And also, that's a breakdown of the survivability of a very brief survivability of mostly, if not all, of the Warframes I just spoke on. So I gotta go. I gotta get up and I gotta go to work early. But I wanted to say that in regards to Warframe. So if anyone wants to get into Warframe and want to know what Warframe is, how Warframe works, why should you play Warframe? If those things don't convince you that Warframe is awesome, I don't know what will. And there are 5 things, and only 5 things that are taken away from the game that would make you not want to play those things. But those 5 to 6 things, if you really are the nitpicky type, still locks the game in within the 9 category. The game doesn't fall into the 8. The game is still in the 9s. And this game deserves to get all the praise it deserves to have, and more. Because it's been 10 years, and they're still going. So if this game doesn't win, best continuing game of the year one day, so there are obviously a lot of morons in this world, and it has nothing to do with the longevity of the game and the playing of the game and the fun factor of the game. It has to do with certain specific people not getting things the way they want it to, as in general in anything. But like I said, if they include those 5 things and fix those 5 things, bring back trials, make loading not as strenuous anymore, make their story cohesive and follow a story path, and I don't know, any other things that they might have missed, and make it better with the Devere Paradox coming out, I believe that this game can win Game of the Year as a continuing game. If the very Paradox, the next major update, turns out to be, if the Veery turns out to be what they said it is, something that's very vastly different from where Warframe was to where Warframe is right now, the same as how Second Dream was to where Warframe is right now, it changed the game. If they really changed up how certain things are being seen and how you play the game, and bring back old players back into the game, and if they reintroduce trials back into the game, this game deserves to win Game of the Year as a continuing game, not as the Game of the Year new game of the year. Like each year you get a new game that comes out that year and it wins Game of the Year. I believe they should win Game of the Year as a continuing game because not many games that are going on for 10 years are still being played by a lot and they're still putting a lot of work into it and dedicated to it. Some people are just, like Neverwinter, the people who made Cryptic from Neverwinter make the game and put a lot of microtransaction or pay to progress in the game. This game doesn't have any of that, which is another thing that's beautiful about this game. They don't force microtransaction on you. They don't force pay to progress on you. You can earn everything in the game, but it won't take you forever to get there. But at the same time, it doesn't take the grind excruciating long to get there. Like a lot of free-to-play games. A lot of free-to-play games, not to point out any fingers, take you excruciatingly long to get to a certain end. Like to finish a campaign of a story may take you a whole month in other games, whereas to finish the whole campaign of a story will only take you about a week in Warframe. If you're trying to finish an entire campaign of, not of a quest, but of a story path. Like if you're trying to, like, say this, if you're trying to finish the story, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If you're trying to finish all 12 of these stories, all 12 that are attached to the story, you could finish it within a week or 2 weeks if you don't have the time. So I would say a total of 2 weeks for all 12 of these. A week to 2 weeks for all 12 of these if you're putting time into it. Other games don't do that for an entire campaign. This is considered an entire campaign. The story is part of an entire campaign. Each of there are increments, sections of that campaign. Other games, for their entire campaign, would take you a month to more than a month. Other free-to-play games. So that's it for me in Warframe. That's it for this 10-year anniversary and respecting 10-year anniversary. That's it for me telling you what Warframe is, where it is, where it's going, where it's been. And hopefully the video turns out to be magnificent, fantastic. And in the end, if this game does go away, it will be like Log Horizon. Only a few people are still playing it, but it will still be available. If it goes offline, it will still be available in single player. You will still be able to play it as multiplayer with other people. It just won't be in the mass multiplayer online arena anymore. It will be like any game that's just multiplayer. You can only play it with a group of friends. So if it goes away, it's never going to completely go away. It's still going to be playable, but it's going to feel more like a single player game. But it doesn't even matter, because if this ever goes to single player, all they have to do is offer the ability to do New Game Plus, and then you can start your adventure all over again and do everything from the beginning all over again in a different way, and you never did it before. So technically this game will never go away, even if it does go away. And hopefully Soulframe is magnificent. If they rework that and they make the enemies more difficult and reaction times for enemies more difficult, that will be my new second favorite from Digital Extremes, or my new second favorite game in total. All they have to do is make the melee feel more like melee. If they make the melee engaging as, say, For Honor, if they make the melee combat as engaging as you do in For Honor, or melee combat as engaging as they do in Dark Souls, or as in Code Vein, if the melee combat is as engaging as it is in Code Vein, then I'm on board 100%. So that's it. Gotta go.